Hello everyone. We are here with the fourth part, I think, of our study, which is about cultural indicators in the cultivation process. I've got some feedback from some former students. You never gave that type of feedback. One or two students gave that, and they thought that if I will be discussing each theoretical construct or module separately, it will be easier to understand. I understand that too. This will add to my work basically, since dealing with each and every module separately and talking about it is time consuming. But I'll do that. There might be some minor themes which don't need too much time, which are kind of self-explanatory and we know about them. I'll just include them in the end of the important structure that we discussed, like the cultivation hypothesis. Cultivation hypothesis is I think in mass communication research and also in what we call media effects. This is the most important one. It deals with, as we have already discussed in the class, effects of television upon audience and behavioral change. It's also a construct which deals with long-term and indirect effects of media. The important thing is that it focuses on television. What does it do basically? What does it try to investigate? Like it would try to investigate basically three things, and the first one is analysis of institutional processes, image in the media content, and relationship between exposure and audience behavior, like exposure to media messages and audience behavior. The central thematics of the cultivation hypothesis is that television creates an identity in itself. Like it's not part of a process. Television viewing is not part of the cultural process. Rather, it's a culture in its own right. Why? And it further explains it that the way television approaches us when we view television is that it changes our behavior, and it's a sustained long-term process. It doesn't do it in one news item or in one program, but rather it gives us a full package of cultural constructs. Like when we watch television, we watch news and we watch like facts and fiction both, and facts and fictions both together weave our television mediated reality. The world, like we live in a social construction of reality where societal norms construct our likes and patterns and the likes and dislikes and rights and wrong and everything. Television, when television came into play and television viewing became popular, so it gained a ritualistic importance in human society. And that's how it became a deciding factor in our likes and dislikes, and not simply that it aided or conflicted with any of the cultural processes, but rather it developed cultural processes of its own. So we are living in a television constructed reality, and each of us has their own television constructed reality. Now, these are very strong arguments, and that's why cultivation theory is widely accepted, rather also referred to, but we still can't really fathom the real impact of it. But many researches which show kind of an identical process going on in television and in real life point towards that. There are a few terminologies that we use, like unlike the stimulus response model, which shows kind of a direct influence, a direct behavioral or attitudinal change. Here we have a cumulative and long-term process going on. Like, it doesn't change one thing in our behavior. Like, when we sit in front of television, we get a set of opinions and rituals, and we internalize those rituals, and when we go out, we very much conform to most of these rituals. Now, it depends again on how much exposure you have to television and how much your social relationships are, but above and beyond that, the cultivation hypothesis believes that no matter how strong your interpersonal relationships are, how strong your cultural roots are, these are destined to change through exposure to television. Like it says that it creates a near total symbolic environment for you. Like, it's not the total symbolic environment, and like it's not everything that you have, but it's a near total symbolic environment. That's a very strong statement, because our social construction of reality is also a near total symbolic environment, because it's not the reality, it's the reality which is defined by cultural norms, by our existence in a particular human group, the way we dress, the way we talk. That's not real, because it might be unreal to somebody else. Like the way the Western societies work and the way we work, like our rituals and norms and mores are different, and one doesn't relate to the other. So both are social constructions. So here it's a near total symbolic world. So what the cultivation hypothesis tells is that viewing television is a symbolic act, and like we have discussed it earlier also. And what we do is that we facts and fiction together. Television viewing is a cumulative process. Like, it's not about that you viewed the news and then you moved to views, or you move to fiction, you watch a movie. And it differs, it doesn't differ, it's the same. You are just going through a full, near total symbolic world, and this is the world that you carry with you. Now what happens is basically that it creates what we call deviants and conformists, like deviants to social cultural norms, and conformists to the television constructed reality. Like, when we view television and the views that are shown in television, or the image that is created in television, when we look at it and we internalize it, so we deviate from social cultural norms, and at the same time we conform to the social cultural, like the television mediated reality. Like we move from one culture to another within the same space, life space that we have. And then there are, the last one is basically an image that you have over here, which is basically telling you about two things. It's about learning and construction. Learning is the process which happens when you are exposed to television. So you start learning, you start knowing the world, and you create a world in your own mind. And that world which lies in your own mind is basically the new symbolic environment that you have. The construction means that you draw inferences from those, and then you try to live the way your television mediated reality has suggested you to live. Like most of the time we see it in the way we dress, the way we talk, and all these things change, and imperceptibly you become a new person. That's where this is also the process of acculturation. Like you submit to a dominant culture which is coming through television. Whenever we call about cultural invasion and things like that, and the dominant culture dominating, like the Western culture coming into our living rooms or drawing rooms or bedrooms, whatever, and changing us. It means simply that we are accepting a dominant culture through television. So that's in a nutshell the idea of what we know as the cultivation hypothesis, that television cultivates a cultural trait within us. It is cumulative, it's a total package, facts and fiction together. Like, you can't differentiate between, you say that you watched a movie and then you viewed news and then it was an opinion and you can differentiate it. No, it's one process. And that's also part of the cultivation hypothesis, that these are kind of what they call organically structured. Like, these are part of the same reality coming to you. These are not different. Like, the news do somehow relate to the fiction that you get. The facts relate to the fiction. Like, you watch movies which are related to, like right now you are seeing movies and like and a lot of talk about pandemics. Like, there are movies that are being suggested on Netflix, the pandemic and all these things. So this is how it's happening. Like, you are watching news, you are living through a reality, then you are watching a movie, then you form opinions. And most of the time these are also reasons behind conspiracy theories and things like that. But also the whole environment, our truth basically changes. So that's the cultivation hypothesis. We have a bit of time, and I'll just speak briefly about agenda setting, because this is the next topic. I really didn't want to do that, but I think agenda setting is a very simple model. Agenda setting means, like, the difference between agenda setting and cultivation hypothesis is that agenda setting does supports the idea of what we call learning through television, but it doesn't support the idea of behavioral change. Like, it's kind of a halfway cultivation hypothesis. And it's very simple to understand that there are basically three agendas: the media agenda, the public agenda, and the policy agenda. Media agenda is what media does, what it wants, how it would like to give the aspects of reality. Public agenda is audience agenda, our agenda, the way we would like to see things and we would like to make decisions. Then policy agenda is basically politics, governance, and all these things. The ideas behind what we call this agenda setting is that parts of reality or parts of happenings or anything that are shown in media become important, and people decide accordingly. Now, most of the agenda setting research is based on voting behavior. Like, these are the aspects of a particular campaign that if you highlight those, people will learn from that, and then decide in favor of certain candidate. Agenda setting is simple, but its impact is huge. Like, the same is true for cultivation. That cultivation is not a simple process, but it is somehow the cultural changes are visible, and somehow it's being used. In the same way, agenda setting is at times really stretched to its limits. Like, political campaigns set the agenda for the media at times. Like, this is how it influences. Sometimes, most times, in a perfect world, the way it's initially defined is that media agenda influences public agenda, and then public agenda influences policy agenda. But that's not all. Sometimes policy agenda, like politicians decide, they strategically maneuver media, and that's why all these public relation exercises and all these press and politics relationships and all these dinners and free rides, these are basically to target audiences. So public agenda, most of the time public agenda is the one that suffers most, because on both sides of the divide, media wants money, policy has money, So most time they come together and they decide to guide or rather fool the people. So agenda setting is simple. This is what it is. Like there are three layers of three different aspects of agendas, and they influence each other. And they normally decide. It's not the relationship matrix, like the relationship construct is not well known, whether people's agenda influence media agenda, whether media agenda influences people's agenda, but they both interrelate to each other. With policy agenda is always there to influence through their strategic implementation of their different plans. So that's it for today. I hope it's useful, and if there is anything that you want to ask